is the best defense a good offense? You know, if you watch enough sports, you hear these cliches all the time, and you oftentimes hear that the best offense is a good defense, right? And so we've flipped that on its head and said, is the best defense a good offense? And we're applying this to the situation with Jonathan Majors. And, you know, unless you've been under a rock for the past couple months, you know he's really been going through it with this domestic violence case. He's facing domestic violence charges based on a situation that happened a few months back with his now ex-girlfriend. And the interesting thing is, you know, his lawyer came out pretty immediately. I believe, you know, the day that the news broke, his lawyer had made a statement saying that he is innocent. And, you know, just as any profession, we all as lawyers have different approaches to how we handle our cases, and especially how we deal with the media. And for me, you know, I tend to play more conservative when it comes to the media and the statements that I give. I really keep them bland, if you will, in terms of emphasizing the fact that my client has constitutional rights. You know, he's innocent until proven guilty, and there's no need to jump to conclusions. And the reason why I take that approach in particular is because you never know what's going to happen, right? And what you don't want to do is have something that you say early on before you have all the information end up blowing up in your face. So that's why me personally, you know, I take a more conservative approach. But his lawyer came out and said, hey, my client is absolutely innocent. And so that was the narrative that went from, at least from the defense camp. And so the interesting thing now is that we recently had news come out that the New York Police Department, so NYPD, has basically concluded that his girlfriend actually attacked him, right? So, you know, obviously he's actually facing misdemeanor domestic violence charges, but the police department has found that there's at least probable cause to arrest her, or at least find that, you know, she actually committed a crime on the night in question, I guess, in addition to Jonathan Majors, right? Because, you know, that case is ongoing. The DA has not made a decision to dismiss that case, at least as far as I know at this point. So you actually have a cross domestic violence situation. The interesting thing that comes up, I think, is the stereotypes as it relates to, or the societal norms as it relates to female on male domestic violence. Because, you know, statistics show that, say, 8 to 9 times out of 10, it is the male who is the aggressor. But, you know, everyone knows that female on male domestic violence does exist, but the issue is that it's not something that, you know, we as a society have, you know, really, I think, you know, we haven't really taken it seriously, such that, you know, a lot of times these things don't get reported, right? A lot of times it can be very embarrassing for a guy to report that he has been assaulted by his girlfriend, right? You know, these type of claims, you know, oftentimes just don't get taken seriously. And that's not to say that, you know, it's not embarrassing for women to go through this too. You know, it is embarrassing for a woman. You know, you have a black eye, or you have marks on your face from, you know, a domestic violence situation. And that can, you know, there can be shame and embarrassment that comes along with that. But I just think on a whole, society is a lot more comforting to women than male victims. And the other thing, when it comes to female aggressors, it oftentimes ends up getting written off as, okay, well, you know, that's the crazy chick that you decided to be with. And again, there can be sometimes even pushback, or guys getting made fun of for being victims of domestic violence, even putting it back on the Jonathan Majors situation for him in particular. I mean, you look, he was just in that Creed movie, and, you know, I haven't seen any of them, but dude has already obviously been doing his work in the gym. He was, you know, he was ripped, obviously fighting in the movie. And so that just kind of adds to the difficult situation of trying to say that you were actually the victim of domestic violence, right? So, and it appears that they didn't exactly take him seriously initially. in terms of him saying that, he didn't have anything to do with this, or he wasn't the one who was being the aggressor in this situation. He was the one that actually got arrested, right? So just in terms of the facts of the case, we know that Grace Jabari, his then girlfriend, had told the police that they were in the back of a vehicle. It was either a cab or an Uber or something, and they had gotten into it. And basically she had said that he slapped her in the face and that he had put his hands on her neck because there was a strangulation allegation, and that he had, forcefully grabbed her hand such to the point that he actually broke her middle finger. And so the interesting thing is that story had kind of flipped a little bit. She apparently had walked back the statement saying that he hadn't put his hands on the back of her neck, but that he had kind of violently pushed her into the car, and that he had grabbed her finger, not her hand, but nonetheless, had grabbed it with such force that, she suffered a broken finger. Now, the interesting thing is, again, the lawyer comes out, a lawyer for Jonathan Majors, and says that this is a lie, right? And it can be really, really difficult when you are the accused in a domestic violence case and you have someone making these, crazy allegations about you, right? Because, when it comes out that she had to, she needed medical attention and, ended up going to the hospital and had these injuries, that, I think he'll forever be tarnished by this information, no matter how this shakes out. Even if it turns out that she's completely lying about everything, and obviously the defense has their position on this where they're saying it's a lie, unfortunately, this will forever be associated with his name, and that's difficult to sit with, especially if he's innocent, and especially if these things are all, lies. That's just a really tough thing to have to deal with, and especially with it being all over the media, on the news, in newspapers, in magazines, and all this information. That's just really tough. But the interesting thing is that apparently the defense's position is that Ms. Jabari was actually just drunk and hysterical, and she had actually got into it with Majors physically because she saw texts from other girls in his phone. And so she ended up, slapping him and hitting him and scratching him in the face. And that, caused him serious pain and bleeding. And in fact, I think he had said that, when he had gone to sleep that night, when he woke up the next morning, his face was stuck to the pillowcase because she had just dug her nails in his face that deeply, causing, blood on his cheek and everything. And so I can't tell you how many times this is what initiates a domestic violence case. A girl seeing things that she doesn't want to see on a guy's phone, whether that's text messages from other girls, he's liking too many pictures of girls on IG, or has pictures in his phone. That cell phone, I mean, listen, if you're in a relationship, right, there's respecting your partner, respecting your girlfriend, respecting your boyfriend, ideally doing things or not doing things that you wouldn't want have to you. And this isn't like me speaking from the mountaintop. This is just, what would be fair, right, in a healthy relationship, right? Not putting your mate in a position where they have to question, are you stepping out on me? Are you cheating on me? Are you entertaining other women? Are you entertaining other men? At my firm, we go through our list of cases, and we just happen to handle a lot of domestic violence cases. And there's so many times where the argument that led to the violence that led to an arrest was based on, a girlfriend seeing things that she didn't want to see on the boyfriend's phone. And then that's what led to the violent situation. So that brings, me to something where I've got to drop some friendly advice, right? There's no judgment here whatsoever because, that's not my style. It's not my firm style. For us, like, we don't judge our clients and what they do because, it's not my position to judge. I'm not here to judge somebody. I'm just here to protect their constitutional rights and make sure they're treated fairly within the system. I mean, I've represented people accused of attempted murder. I've represented people accused of murder. I've represented people accused of rape and all kinds of things that, society would judge and look down upon, but I don't judge anybody for anything that they do. With that being said, right, ladies, it is not okay to put your hands on your boyfriend or on your husband for things that you see on his phone, no matter what. And that's just the truth. I mean, do you have a right to be upset? Absolutely. Do you have a right to communicate how upset, hurt, frustrated, angry, all these, negative emotions you might be experiencing from what you perceive to be a violation of your trust, a violation of your, vows if you're married, or just a violation of the relationship if it's just a girlfriend, boyfriend, exclusive relationship? Yes. But that certainly does not give you license to put your hands on your man. It doesn't. And to the extent that you think that's okay, then, that behavior should be switched up. You should probably get in some sort of anger management or something to help you come up with new and better coping mechanisms to deal with things that upset you. On the flip side, fellas, it's not okay to put your hands on your woman because, she said something you didn't like, or because she cheated on you, or because she called you out on your manhood or anything like that. And I'm citing these as examples because these things happen all the time. And so same thing, if your woman does something, and again, you have every right to be upset by something she might have said to you that you were offended by, or that you thought was improper, or you thought was out of line, or whatever your response is to it, or however you interpret it, that doesn't give you license to put your hands on her. So neither one of you have the right to put your hands on each other. And, not only is it just wrong, but it also can have, very serious legal implications and complications, which can lead to you getting arrested and potentially facing a misdemeanor or felony charge over something that completely could have been avoided if you were to address your anger issues, or just to learn and educate yourself or be educated on the fact that it's not okay to put your hands on somebody. Just got to throw that out there because, maybe somebody watches that and they realize, hey, man, I do need to get in anger management. I have taken it a step too far in these situations. So got to drop that every now and then. But anyhow, these accusations, again, have been all over the media. And I just imagine that Jonathan Majors has really been going through it, again, especially if his position is that he didn't do anything wrong. And, the reason why I know how difficult it is because time and time again, I've seen my clients, lose their job or be on the verge of losing their job, or just be afraid of losing their job, afraid of going into custody, upset about the stain on both their rap sheet, so their record, but just their reputation in general from people knowing that they've been arrested and charged with domestic violence. And that's not put out for the whole world or the whole nation to see on the news and reports on what's going on with your business ventures and all that kind of stuff, like is happening with Jonathan Majors, right? And so he's suffered some really major losses as a result of this situation, right? He had gotten on with a U.S. Army campaign. Apparently he was part of a promotion. They ended up pulling that, right? They can't have the United States Army name associated with somebody who's facing domestic violence charges, right? That's just a PR nightmare for the government. And speaking of PR, apparently, his PR firm had pulled out and severed ties with him. His management team severed ties. Those are very serious relationships, obviously, that have, 7 and probably 8 and potentially 9-figure deals on the table that, have just basically disappeared at this point due to this case. And so, for anybody, it really can feel like the sky is falling and it is a life emergency, and it's really difficult. But, again, from the defense, and this is the importance of your defense team doing an investigation as soon as possible, seeing if they can dig up any information that they can to refute the allegations. And this is part of that, sort of going on offense, or not just waiting, not reacting to things, but actually going proactively and getting the information in order to clear your client's name. So the interesting thing was the defense had put out information about two things that I think were, or at least that they believed to be important: the text messages that they put out, and then some of the nightclub video footage. With the defense investigation, it's really important because obviously if the police ended up arresting you, they ultimately found that there's probable cause or reason to believe that a crime has been committed and you're the one that committed the crime, right? So they give that information to the DA, and the DA is running with that, and they're filing charges against you, right? So you know that the government, with all its infinite resources, is doing their best to build a case against you. So on the defense side of things, you ideally have a team that's doing their best to build up a defense for you, right? With the defense team putting out these text messages, it just did not have the effect that they thought it was going to have. I mean, if you saw on Twitter, there was just such a huge pushback, like, whatever you thought these texts were going to do, it's not working, right? And to be quite honest with you, I mean, these texts on some level did read as somebody who was a victim, who was trying to do whatever they could to get their boyfriend out of the trouble that they caused. I just really didn't see these text messages as helpful to Jonathan Major's case at all. It just really seemed like someone who was like, I told them that I didn't want the case to move forward. They told me that nothing would happen or that you weren't going to get charged. You can read them, but, just at the end of the day, I just think the release of those text messages wasn't exactly the best move. It's not really something that I would have done, for the reason that, it just, the public's pushback and the public's feedback, I think was pretty accurate. I kind of looked at them in the same way. The other thing that they put out was the video footage. And first, when I saw that they were saying that, she ended up going to the club after this alleged incident, my first thought, because I hadn't really looked that deeply into it, was that because sometimes people can try and make the argument that, hey, if you had been the victim of a domestic violence incident, like, why were you then out partying or what have you? And the reason why I just kind of thought that would not have necessarily been a good strategy is because people can grieve in different ways. People can grieve in different ways and process trauma or a negative situation in different ways. And just because you're out at a nightclub the night after you allegedly got assaulted doesn't mean that didn't exactly happen. So that was like my initial thought, but it then turned out that wasn't exactly the way they were using the information. Apparently, she again had said that that Jonathan had broken her middle finger or severely injured it, right? And so in this video, she's seen like walking up a staircase and she's holding on to the rail with no difficulty, as you grip a rail. And there's another part where she's like manipulating her hair and she does, kind of one of these maneuvers. And then I think she shakes somebody's hand in a DJ booth and grabs a shot glass or something like that. And so if your hand was just broken, right? So if your hand was just broken, you would have a very difficult time being able to do all those things. You would probably be favoring that finger. And maybe if you did one of those moves, you might be just like, man, forgetting that your finger was injured, but you certainly wouldn't be able to do these things with the level of ease that she was able to do them. In that sense, I think those videos are very powerful and useful to the defense because, again, if this case were to go in front of a jury and she were trying to say, hey, he grabbed my hand and he broke my finger or he really injured my finger, they're then able to use that video during their cross-examination, be able to say, hey, if your finger was broken, how were you able to grip that stair rail? How were you able to shake hands with this person? How were you able to manipulate your hair? How were you able to grab that shot glass with no difficulty? It just makes her look like a liar on the stand. And so the interesting thing is that it came out that apparently she ended up in his apartment, after this incident had allegedly taken place. And this was her coming back from the club. And that's when she had these injuries to like the side of her face or her ear. And when she got the finger injury, and so from Major's perspective, it would have been just unknown how she got this, right? And if she had gotten that drunk, we've all heard of somebody just being really drunk and falling out. And if you fall, let's say you fall into the side of a stucco building, right? You're walking and stumble into a building and boom, hit, and that can cause scratching to the side of your face, or just the falling, on something hard can cause a cut or some sort of laceration. Obviously, falling can cause a finger injury, and that's obviously going to be what the defense harps on if this thing goes to trial, to be able to assert that, hey, if his position is that by the time they left each other, that she didn't have any of these injuries, but rather, that next time he saw her or whenever she ended back up at his apartment, that's when, she had already had these injuries, but that he didn't cause them, because he would obviously take the stand, and he would take the stand and be able to say, like, no, she had actually attacked me because she saw this information on my phone, and he's prepared to testify to that. Then now we have the buildings or the makings of what appears to be a solid defense. And so I think it's really interesting to see how this thing is going to play out, because apparently there's an August trial date. We have NYPD who's come out and said, hey, there's probable cause to arrest her for domestic violence. She's apparently in London, so she's not even in the country. If she comes back to New York City, then she runs the risk of getting arrested. But she has to come back in order to testify. And so if that then is the strategy, because they have this trial date in August, and that is a very quick or short amount of time to have between the arrest and trial, it's really been fast tracked, and that's your right? If you don't want to drag this out and you want to move to trial quickly, you certainly can. But I think, the idea is that, hey, we've now gone on offense. We've provided information to the police such that there's been a finding of probable cause that she is in the wrong, right? So she's at risk of being arrested. That then makes it to where, hey, if she comes back to the United States, comes back to New York City, then she could get arrested and taken into custody. And obviously she doesn't want to get arrested. So, there's going to be kind of a game that's played in terms of, is she willing to come back and risk getting taken into custody? It's my understanding that she did work, I think, doing dancing as part of, movies. And that's actually how her and Jonathan ended up getting together. So then it's like, okay, well, are you willing to forego future business opportunities in the United States because you don't want to come back and get arrested, right? I imagine that there's, just equally available amount of business in the UK. So it'll be interesting to see, because, if she decides that she doesn't want to come back to the United States, then the DA doesn't really have a case. I mean, in a domestic violence case, you do need your victim to show up to court. And in saying that, I just want to say this, because sometimes it comes up that people try and use as a strategy the idea that their girlfriend or their wife is not going to show up to court. Let me just let you know this. That is not a winning strategy. That's not even a strategy at all. I think that's very much just a Hail Mary and hope. And the reality is that's not effective. If a case needs to go to trial, your girlfriend or wife is going to get subpoenaed, right? She's going to get subpoenaed, which means she has to show up to court. If she doesn't show up to court, a warrant can be issued for her arrest, and she could be held in contempt, and she could end up going to jail for a couple days. Most people are not going to be willing to take a misdemeanor charge and go to jail to not come to court for you. And so, and if you try and convince somebody to do that, that can be, at least in California, that can be a strike. That is a very serious offense. It's called dissuading a witness, and you just don't want that on your record. So whenever I have somebody, a client, saying that, oh, well, my girlfriend's not even going to show up, or my wife's not willing to participate in the process, I have to let them know that, hey, that's not going to be a solid defense strategy. We need to look in another direction. If she's on your side, there's other ways that we can utilize her cooperation other than just trying to say that she's not going to show up. That's not a winning defense strategy. But in this particular case, it very well could lead to his case being dismissed by virtue of the alleged victim not being available because she refuses to show up. And it's not like, she lives in the same city, just like it would be the case with your girlfriend or your wife. No, she's out of the country, right? So she truly would be unavailable. And so that could very well lead to a dismissal. We'll see how this thing plays out. Let me know what you think about the charges and how that's affected his life. It's definitely hit him in the pocketbooks. Fortunately, it appears that he's still, within the Marvel cinematic universe. So that's a good thing. I think that's what it's called, right? Marvel Cinematic Universe, whatever. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you got something out of this video and analysis, show me some love, hit the like button, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Turn on those notifications so you never miss a new video when it drops. As always, I want to thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace.